Welcome back to Diabetics Radio, the podcast where lived experience meets science and we explore what it really means to heal with type 1 diabetes. I'm your host, Bowie Madison, and today we've reached a really big milestone, episode 50. And for this one, we're touching on some sensitive subjects because with the spotlight now on Vertex Pharmaceuticals and Sana Biotechnology, the world is buzzing. Are we witnessing the first cure for type 1 diabetes? Or are we witnessing the creation of a new market? In this episode titled A Cure Created or A Cure Sold, we'll examine the science, the strategy, and the soul behind these breakthroughs. Here's what we'll cover. In part one, we'll explore what it means to live in a diabetes renaissance, which I argue we are in, a time when scientific breakthroughs and community engagement are accelerating, but so are the commercial interests behind them. Part two, we'll bring in the voices of health professionals. What are they excited about and what's raising red flags? In part three, we break down the actual science behind the Vertex and Sana approaches, from stem cells to immune cloaking and what they mean for beta cell regeneration. And finally, in part four, we ask the big question: how do we keep our power as those with type 1 diabetes? What role do we play in choosing our healing paths? What options do we have? And how do we stay grounded in them? This isn't just a podcast. It's a conversation about the future of type 1 diabetes care and the line between hope and hype. Let's get into it. So here's what we cover. We need to discern, as those with diabetes, type 1, type 2, and everything in between, what is in a cure that serves what we want and what we need, right? Is this simply a wish granted for surface level symptoms, or is it something more, something deeper? And where are we as a society with diabetes in terms of what we've come to understand about the disease itself, what we've come to expect from people in a place to influence the health resources available to us, and how we navigate what we're being given versus what we've achieved and what we understand on our own, right? So we need to be able to discern quick fixes from root causes. Context is everything. And I mean this from a macro scale in terms of understanding markets and, the business side of health, as well as our own epidemiology and disease pathology, and how Bowie with type 1 diabetes may be different from you with type 1 diabetes, and what those differences mean when it comes to what we look for in a cure. And then we're going to talk about the technological advances, Sana Biotechnology, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, and the infinite levels of CGMs, insulin pumps, closed loop systems, and whether or not these are solutions or simply distractions. And healthcare independence, right? Are we re-upping our, what I always like to think of like auto subscription in this healthcare industry, right? Are we just going for a new round for a new thing? Why or why not, right? Is there a bigger narrative at play? And when it comes to changing the cycles of these things, who holds the power in these situations? So in terms of being in a diabetes renaissance, having had the disease for over 20 years, we, as those with diabetes, have never been more connected. We have never been able to collaborate on a global scale like what we're doing right now. From people on social media just kind of venting about their day-to-day struggles, emotionally, physically, with the disease, just it being welcome in the mainstream. I remember I went through my entire childhood and early adulthood imagining that my success as someone with type 1 diabetes was gauged by how many people knew I had it. The better I was at it, the fewer people knew about it, right? Because I just wanted to fit in. I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. It was just, and that has completely lifted. People are talking about it, and it's a wonderful thing in a lot of regards. More people are being impacted, right? There are just simply more cases of it at an alarming rate all over the world, all kinds of demographics. And so, it's starting to become an undeniable sore in the healthcare system. And thus we're kind of starting to enter a new phase of technology and resources available to us. And with our greater community, with our greater connections, we're starting to hear more anecdotal stories being tested, verified, dismissed based on people's actual experiences and our ability to share it and report back on what it is we're doing. And it's clear to see that the general public, the patients, if you will, people with type 1 diabetes, know more about the disease than at any point ever, right? Before, we were coming from a place where it was like, diabetes is genetic, beta cells don't work, I take insulin, and that's it. That's all we could know. That was just what we had available to us, and that was it. We know more about the disease and how it operates than ever before, and so much of it is coming from our own curiosity, which is outstanding. And with this increased curiosity, we're finding even more and more variations of diabetes. You have LADA, type 1.5, type 3, type 2, type 1, and all of like a full spectrum of those with type 1. It's not just a clear-cut case for everyone. So with all of these varying degrees of expression in a diabetic case, there's a lot of people seeing success with multiple modalities, whether it be dietary and lifestyle changes, energy work, energy therapies, alternative healing practices, herbs, supplements. People are seeing real substantial results independent of anything that was available to us as a resource when we were completely dependent on the healthcare system. And with these realizations, we're starting to separate ourselves a little bit from the influence of the healthcare system, because we realize that they may not know, or they may not be letting on how much they know about what we can do for ourselves. And we've begun to build community around that. For one, the Beta Cell Project on Discord, that's a community I started talking about what else we can be doing. We have tons of success stories, decreasing insulin, getting off of insulin, 20 to 30 plus years on insulin, brand new, extending honeymoons, all different kinds of things. A relatively new one to me, Crushing Type 1 on Facebook. It's run by a gentleman who is an anesthesiologist whose daughter was just newly diagnosed, and he's doing a lot to bring social awareness to not just what it means to be a parent to someone with type 1 diabetes, but also how we can be interacting with the industry itself to bring about meaningful change, as well as Reddit. T1 Remission, started by a friend of mine from the Beta Cell Project, talking about the same thing. It's just another outlet for people to connect and talk about how we can address diabetes and ultimately not have it anymore. So, talking about the success that people have had, multiple modalities, I have 3 categories here that have all had anecdotal success in either eliminating diabetes symptoms or greatly reducing them. Qigong, for those that are unfamiliar, it is an Eastern practice of energy movement through the body, bodily awareness, emotional release with physical consequences, how we hold energy in our body, organ specific connections to emotions, and how we can help clear that, lymphatic clearance, grounding energy. I know someone who halved their insulin use based simply on a commitment to a Qigong practice. You have supplements, vitamin D3, K2, quercetin, resveratrol, magnesium, different cleanses and detoxes to help eliminate accumulated toxins in the liver, the gut, the nervous system, the immune system, what have you. I know someone who has gone through all of these things and gotten off insulin completely after about 2 years of insulin dependence. Again, incredible stuff and something not a lot of people talk about. And then diet, eliminating processed foods, focusing on whole foods, and improving our dietary hygiene, whether that be meal timing, whether that be the quantity of food that we're eating, the frequency of meals, all of the different factors that go into how we consume food and what those foods are supplying us when we eat. And with all of these alternative therapies, the overarching feeling of society as a whole is like, okay, this is good, right? This is exciting. But I still have diabetes. It's good, but is it good enough? And so we're still searching for this final piece. What ties it all together and puts a bow on it so that I don't have to do this anymore? And then you have to ask yourself, okay, in my unique situation, what am I missing? Is it one thing? Is it multiple things? Is it an order of operations issue where I need to do A, B, and C first before I get to X, Y, Z? Is there no real singular right answer? Are there multiple solutions? Is anyone actually off insulin? And like I mentioned before, the answer is yes. There are people who have been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, insulin dependent, and are now off for an extended period of time, a year plus, almost 2 years at this point. But with that, right, you say, okay, Bowie, you say you know someone who's cured diabetes, but like, what does that mean? What were his conditions before? What were their conditions before? You know, how can I take what they've done and apply it to me so that I don't have to do this anymore? And that's when you have to start to ask yourself, what is a cure? And I put the Trojan horse here because we're going to branch into what the healthcare industry is working at in terms of bringing about therapies to help us along. But this is a really important time for us as a diabetes community. We have to remain very clear about what we want. What do we want from a cure? Is this just, I don't want to be on insulin anymore? Or is this, I want my body to be healthy enough to create its own insulin again? And there is a difference. We need to be able to differentiate between those two things. Insulin, we'll see, is a symptom. It's surface level. There is something deeper at play here that we need to make sure that we're addressing. Because I would argue the cure that we're being offered now in regards to stem cell islet transplants, it's answering a question that was posed by an old, outdated understanding of how diabetes operates, right? We all remember our onboarding when we were first diagnosed. It's genetic. There's nothing you could have done. It was going to happen regardless. Your autoimmune system went rogue, killed off your beta cells, and there's nothing we could have done about it. So your beta cells are wrongfully targeted. You take exogenous insulin now to regulate your blood sugar. cross your fingers and hope that the medical research and biotechnology industries come up with some kind of solution, right? That's where we're at, or that's where we were at. And so with our understanding there, what does that mean for expectations when it comes to a cure? We want to resolve the issues, right? Beta cells got attacked, don't make insulin. So we would need beta cells that make insulin. We may need to manipulate the genes in our body that made our beta cells not make insulin properly. And then downstream of that, what are some of the food sensitivities, comorbidities, complications, whether that be liver, kidneys, gut? Maybe we take some medication on the side to help take care of those while we have beta cells that make insulin, right? Pretty straightforward. And then kind of like secondary to resolving the issues is the ability to prevent the issue from happening again, right? Is this just kind of like, okay, well, I'm missing beta cells that make insulin. Why don't I just plug in beta cells that make insulin and then everything goes back to normal, right? We want to make sure that we don't let this happen again. Because what's in a cure? If we give ourselves beta cells that make insulin, but we don't actually know how to prevent it from happening again, is it a cure? In my eyes, no, because we have no way of preventing it from happening again. And so let's reflect back on what we've learned in this diabetes renaissance, right? Diabetes is a symptom of greater systemic imbalance. The genetic explanation accepted for the longest time is incomplete. Completely incomplete. There's not a clear line of inheritance. 90 to 95% of the people with the genes that correlate with diabetes don't actually get diabetes. So there's something else at play here that we are not acknowledging. The timeline of disease progression is longer than we originally thought. A lot of times it was like, didn't have diabetes, you had a triggering event, and now you have diabetes. And so people really focused on triggering events for the longest time. But then when you start to audit your health in the years and months leading up to your diabetes diagnosis, we started to see that, no, there was a lot going on before diabetes came about, before the triggering event that would lead us to believe that something was not right. And this could be liver toxicity, dysfunction, antibiotic use, infections, bacteria, virus, nervous system regulation, traumatic events in life, an immune system on overdrive for a litany of different things. And then you combine all of that with the nutrient poor food and downright harmful ingredients being pushed in society right now, and the systemic impacts it has on cellular environments and their ability to function properly. And so we see in this graphic here that diabetes, what we see as the problem that we want an answer for, that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? That's the most prevalent, inconvenient symptom that we have. And what I want to stress is that when it comes to accepting a cure, we need to make sure that we are not just simply focused on the most annoying symptom of them all. We need to pay attention to the underlying foundational issues that manifested this most annoying symptom. And unless we do, all we're doing here is managing a symptom, which by definition is not a cure, right? So I really want everyone to commit this visual to memory. Because unless the cure that achieves resolving this, right? Oh, beta cells and insulin, no more diabetes. That's awesome. Unless we get this and we address this, not a cure in my eyes. So let's update it, right? Let's update it and make sure that we're getting what we want. And so notice I've switched these. Before, it was the main issue was the blood sugar regulation. Now, let's address the underlying issues and imbalances. Why did this happen, and what can we do to prevent it from happening again? From an educational standpoint, making sure that people know about their bodies and know about the systems and the environment, lifestyle, and diet factors that we can use to influence them in a positive way. And once we have those foundations, how can we then use them intelligently to resolve the symptoms, which would be the blood sugar regulation, insulin independence, dietary freedom, and healthy, sustainable functioning beta cells and the resulting food sensitivities and comorbidities. This is what I expect from a cure, from the left to the right. And then this is a huge cause for emotional distress in a lot of people new to the disease, because they're seeing that with our recent advancements in the diabetic community in terms of our understanding of the disease development, modern allopathic medicine's understanding of the body and the application of their available resources is not very good. Objectively not very good, right? You're not going to find a doctor that talks about food and nutrition in a way that's going to influence the diabetic state, the disease state. They don't know it. It's not their fault that they don't talk about it. They just simply, it's not a part of their lexicon. It's not a part of their curriculum. They don't know it. What they do know is medication interactions and symptom management, right? So like that's all they know. That's all they know how to do. And it is just not enough. Not only not just not enough, it's downright harmful and it's hurting us, and people are not getting better. And we recognize that. And so the physician-patient rapport, very poor, partially because physicians don't have enough time to hear out what patients have to say. They're overloaded. They're seeing thousands of patients. How the hell are they supposed to give what every patient needs? They can't. And so the patient experience, the patient education, the patient experience is deteriorating. It's so poor. Nobody wants to go to the doctor anymore. So few people actually trust medicine. They're educating themselves, finding relief in places away from medicine. And the rift between the two continues to grow. And I've asked on social media, like, for doctors to weigh in on this, because I know they have to be able to see this, at least in the newer generations. Health professionals feel their influence on their audience slipping away. Who is the authority? I would love to know who the newest generations from millennials and younger, who they really see as a major health authority. Like, who do they trust for their health information? And so sometimes health professionals rule by force. Like, hey, I'm a doctor, you're not. Here's what it is. Here's what you're going to take. And that's just, for me at least, that's a perfect way for me to be like, no thanks, I'm not gonna be forced into anything here. But you also have to empathize with some of these doctors. They're overworked, way too many patients. They just begin to dissociate. It's like, it's just a job. they've started to realize the limitations of the systems in place. Their education, they just don't know enough about what's going on. Insurance, pharmaceuticals, and the underlying incentive for profits in these healthcare systems. I mean, we're getting mad at cogs in a wheel they didn't build. So I get it. I get from both sides why doctors are struggling and why patients are becoming frustrated with them. But I would argue societal trust in the health profession has never been lower. And so you have to kind of like zoom out a little bit and try and figure out how they reinstate institutional trust. How are they going to get us back into their office and basically be compliant again? So what's begun to happen is that the waters of our alternative health are being muddied, right? People practicing quote unquote health and wellness, their education and their experiences being questioned, the results and their testimonials are being questioned. Doctors themselves are overselling vitamins and minerals, but without the education or systemic context of what they're selling does. And so they prop up these different things to take, and it's not the outright answer. And so all the lines get blurred between, is this useful, is this not? Because we are all conditioned to see everything from a singular cause and effect mechanisms. Classically, if you're low in magnesium, the logical answer would be, oh, you're low in magnesium, take more magnesium. It's 1-to-1. Is that the case in every position with every mineral or vitamin? Absolutely not. You might be low in magnesium because you're over retaining calcium, because you don't have enough potassium, because you are overly stressed and you can't regulate your nervous system, even if you did have enough magnesium on board. There's just way too many factors at play, and everything has been diluted in the lack of education from both a patient and a doctor standpoint. And then you tap into the fear of harm and embarrassment from both sides as well. The patient being underqualified and fragile. I field questions all the time. Is it safe to do this? Sometimes yes, sometimes I don't know. But we've been convinced, like, if I take 1 tablet of magnesium twice a day instead of just once a day like my doctor told me, am I going to croak? And so we're being scared into doing the right thing per what your doctor has said. And so only educated and qualified individuals can practice. Just the irony of that statement alone. You have to have been to school for 8 years and qualified by all of these boards of education to practice medicine. Medicine is only ever a practice, never something mastered. And, if you try something different, you're a fool for even trying. And so this kind of rolls into, we're kind of getting into, this is like part 2 here, or the predatory marketing of things being sold as the answer with underwhelming and incomplete results, because nobody has the complete context of how these things are working within your unique system. Products are being sold with added and counterproductive ingredients to dull intended effects. Turmeric versus turmeric and black pepper is just one example. The piperine in black pepper is something that synergizes with turmeric and the curcumin to bring about greater impacts, as opposed to people just taking turmeric and wondering why it's not working or why it's actually hurting their digestive system. Side effects like magnesium oxide and citrate making you poop your pants, and you thinking, oh, well, it must not be magnesium. I took magnesium, it made me sick. It only made you sick because it was not an easily absorbed thing, and it's known to cause GI distress. And then anti-nutrients, vitamin E, tocopherol and tocotrienols being mixed with sunflower oil. Vitamin E is an antioxidant being mixed with oxidized and polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's like, I'm going to sell you ice in a bucket of hot water. It just comes out lukewarm. So it's not productive. And so with all of this, us as consumers, we're losing faith in what these vitamins, minerals, herbs, and supplements can actually do. Like all of these things, they've all of these things have had their time in the limelight with some really excellent results, but not enough. So some people will build it into a daily routine, but then they kind of lose faith in it, or it's like not enough after so much amount of time that it just kind of loses its sheen. And so when it loses its sheen and we are, trying all this stuff, but how the hell, why isn't it working? We either lose trust or can't afford this kind of like finicky and intentionally sales-driven supplement market, marginal unsustained benefits, decision fatigue, just like, what the hell am I supposed to take? Why? I take more pills than I eat food in a day. Everyone's just kind of getting exhausted. So what do we resort back to? What the doctor wanted from us in the first place. Schedule follow-up. Okay, go ahead and try that other stuff, but make sure you keep taking your medication. We'll see you at the pharmacy in a couple months. So let's reflect where we are coming from. We are finding new facets of disease development. Diet, lifestyle, cellular health, nervous system integration. This has created more curiosity and more skepticism around previous understandings of how diabetes came about, and opened new doors and new possibilities in how we address the needs. In these new discoveries, we're excited about it and we're ready to share. We're ready to start talking, and we have begun that. So when we go to what our health professionals' response is to what we're excited about now, they're recognizing holes in their curriculum and their understanding of disease pathology. They were not right about the things that they told us they were right about before. So fear and authority start to become part of their toolbox to make sure that you stay compliant and they stay paid. So, and given the research model for how things get adopted and integrated into the medical system, it's just so slow. It's so slow. And we've got too many people struggling with too many disorders to wait for these cycles to take their full effect. And so the restrictive systemic practices in insurance, in pharmaceuticals, in medicine, they're preventing advancement, the exact advancement that we are recognizing in how we're going about what we're doing. So now let's move into examining the presented solutions from both Vertex Pharmaceuticals and Sana Biotechnology. Okay, we're going to start with the science of it all. What are these newest breakthroughs and what do they offer us? Artificially enhanced beta cell stability. We want beta cells that aren't going to get knocked off by the immune system. So Sana has introduced these immunoevasive beta cells that implant, produce insulin, and have a bunch of cellular mechanisms along the way that help cloak it and enclose it from the immune system so that they can persist. Vertex, another means of implanting healthy beta cells, that can actually stay in the pancreas and become responsive to blood sugar levels in a way that helps regulate them. Vertex requires immunosuppressants because it does not have that protection measure that Sana does. Both have led to stabilized blood sugars requiring little to no exogenous insulin after an incubation period. Some of them were 6 months. There was a year follow-up, I think was the big mark of success in the recent disclosures of the progress being made. So it's exciting, right? Because we're ultimately being given that thing we wanted the most, which was beta cells that make insulin. So let's take a little bit closer look at what Sana Biotechnology is all about. It's using something called hypoimmune technology, HIP, hypoimmune technology. And this is a tested immune evasion technology. It's a way for it to avoid being detected by the immune system. So it's a stem cell derived therapy as a one-time treatment for patients with type 1 diabetes with a goal of normal blood glucose, no insulin, and no immunosuppression, right? All those things check some pretty big boxes for those with diabetes, right? And this is all from the Sana Biotechnology website, by the way. Now, this they don't talk a whole lot about on the Sana Biotechnology, but I did some deep dive into how this HIP technology works. And it does it via two main mechanisms. So removing HLA expression and overexpressing CD47. So HLA, if you are at all familiar with my channel, I've talked about it before, human leukocyte antigen gene complexes. It's got ties to diabetes development. It has a lot to do with our immune system's ability to recognize friend from foe, right? These are like the policemen that go around plugging into cells and making sure, hey, do you belong here? Hey, do you belong here? No, I'm activating the immune system, getting rid of you. So these base cells from Sana don't have a plug. They are genetically modified to delete these particular classes and portals that our immune system interacts with in cells to activate the immune system, right? It blunts T cells' ability to recognize these beta cells. So it's kind of like blocks them, you can't touch me, closed off. And then with this CD47, cells can express a don't eat me message, like, hey, back off, I'm safe. It cloaks me, right? We want to make sure that we're covering from both sides of the coin. One coin is saying like, hey, listen, I'm going to make sure that these implanted beta cells don't present anything to the immune system for them to attack me. Not only that, but I'm putting out a signal that says, like, leave me alone, don't interact, don't eat me, right? This is preventing cellular, like intracellular things from cleaning it out and getting rid of it. So think about this. Sana Biotechnology has a beta cell that is camouflaged, right? It blends in. It's not presenting antigens. It's like, oh yeah, I'm good, I'm safe. The immune system, not going to be detected. I put out CD47. This is saying I'm safe. Not only can you not engage with me, don't even worry that I'm here. Totally safe. You don't need to worry about me. Now let's think about this on kind of a little bit more of a systemic scale. This solution operates under the assumption that beta cell destruction is immune initiated. This assumes that nothing outside of just the immune system acting on beta cells incorrectly is why type 1 diabetes happens in the first place. Is that okay? Do we think that there are other things at play in the development of diabetes beyond just immune initiation? I sure do. Right? What about the nutritional side of cellular health? Things like the liver, the gut, the brain, the nervous system, pathogen exposure. Might these have an effect on beta cells? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, they do. And I would argue that it was those things, the nutrition and the liver health, gut health, nervous system, that disrupted the beta cells enough in the first place to get the immune system involved. So the immune system is secondary to cellular health. And this kind of voids that and is just like, well, we're going to take care of the immune system so whatever beta cells we implant can survive. Questionable. And also, the immune system plays an important role in normal healthy cells, cleaning healthy cells, protecting them from outside pathogens. When a cell goes through a regular life cycle, it ages just like anything else. So when cells age, they become senescent. They become engaged with the immune system that help clean them out and allow for a new cell cycle. Is that going to be impacted by being completely camouflaged and saying everything's safe? What if we have an old cell that needs to be engaged and can't? Just food for thought. And then the next thing, this really caught me off guard and is something that I will expand upon in another video. But when you think about the characteristics I just mentioned, the decreased HLA expression and the increased CD47 expression, I've heard of both of these things before. What other cell types are masters of disguise in evading immune detection? And it just so happens to be through these exact metrics. Decreasing HLA presentation, right? Not creating antigens so that our immune system can engage, and also overproducing CD47 so that the body thinks it's safe and it can just do what it wants to. Think about it. What cells go undetected for too long before they become a problem? Cancer cells. Cancer cells thrive using these same exact mechanisms that we're employing in getting these beta cells to survive. Now, there's some nuance in the SANA technology, but they're not talking about this. They are not talking about this, and there are definitely things that we need to be talking about, because if you were to Google CD47 or HLA and cancer cells, thousands of papers. These are just a few, but you can see here in the bottom, HLA class molecules are key in tumor recognition and T-cell mediated elimination. Loss of HLA class expression results in reduced antigen presentation and facilitates cancer immune evasion. So this is like weird. This is really weird to me, that we're kind of borrowing cell mechanisms from cancer that cancer uses to proliferate and survive in the body, and using them in beta cells. We need to know more. We need way more details, right? So How is a beta cell that is designed to evade the immune system being cleaned and maintained in a way that allows the cell to flourish and proliferate, right? Some things are handled internally by the cell without involving the immune system. Redox clearance, ROS loads, senescent cells, cell turnover. These are all things tied to the nutrition aspect of things, our liver's ability to clear things out. Those need to be taken care of from a diet and lifestyle standpoint. And if anything were to go wrong within beta cells, the immune system comes in, disposes of what needs to get disposed of so that everything else can return to normal. Are we making those secondary efforts to ensure proper nutrient supply? Whether it be, regulating calcium, magnesium, potassium balance, and mitochondrial iron management. Because if we don't address those things, the cell isn't able to sustain itself from the inside, and it would need the immune system to come in and get rid of those damaged beta cells. So the immune system is a necessary component of healthy cell and tissue maintenance. And how are these components being controlled for in these Sana biotech answers, right? Because, yeah, they're healthy beta cells now, but how are they being fed in our body? Like, it's not just like an infinite battery. There's a huge thing to be addressed. And I asked this question and dove a little bit deeper into, okay, well, beta cells have a life cycle. That, it's not like, oh, I have one beta cell and it lasts forever until the immune system kills. It's like, no, beta cells have shelf lives. And how are they being cycled through without immune interaction? That's impossible. So HIP technology frequently employs an anti-CD47 to remove the quote-unquote cloaking mechanism to submit the cells to immune detection. So the same things that made those beta cells sustainable, right? And they did this in the trial themselves. If a cell expresses a lot of CD47, it's not going to be acted upon. What happens if a beta cell malfunctions, right? Sana Biotechnology protected itself and was like, hey, okay, if CD47 is what is kind of creating that cloak of invisibility, we're going to inject anti-CD47 to eliminate that invisibility cloak, and then the immune system comes in and cleans things out. So in those Sana trials, if a cell line stopped functioning, the anti-CD47 exposed the implanted cells and the immune system removed them. This is good for safety, right? If something goes awry and it's producing at these high rates, but with no way of regulating it, it's good for safety because we need to be able to, whoa, stop. But it's bad for longevity. Because if a healthy beta cell typically lives anywhere from 20 to 50 days, depending on how healthy that environment is, how are we dealing with cell turnover and cell reproduction? Are these implanted beta cells able to go through a typical life cycle? Because a typical life cycle requires immune intervention, but they're cloaked from the immune system. So how is an aged beta cell being removed so that a new beta cell can take its place? And this is where it's like, oh, this isn't forever. I might need more than one injection, right? Because it's being sold as a one-time procedure. But CD47 blockade, taking in the anti-CD47 leads to global clearance of all of the cells. So it's not like, oh, one of the implanted beta cells is not doing something right. Can we give Can we basically remove the cloak from just one? No, it's everything. So if you get a full injection of good beta cells and one goes wrong that you need to take care of, and you take that anti-CD47, everything gets wiped out. So this would mean starting the entire islet replacement cycle all over again. So new implanted cells. There's no current way to selectively uncloak only dysfunctional subsets of HIP cells, all or nothing. That's not something that they're talking about. Something we need to be talking about. All right, so let's move on to Vertex Pharmaceuticals. They're using an islet cell therapy. They're implanting healthy beta cells. They called it Zimiclocel. It is a beta cell replacement therapy that restores insulin production, regulates blood sugar, and allows insulin independence for most participants. Now, it does not have the immuno-evading technology that Sana does, which, based on what we just learned, might be a good thing. But then that means that it's going to rely on immunosuppression, which introduces its own risks and side effects. So it offers a functional cure at the cellular level in terms of, hey, you've got beta cells that make insulin, but not a cure for the immune or metabolic causes of type 1 diabetes. So this is from the New England Journal of Medicine's report on Vertex's trials. They did it on 12 patients. Of those 12 that reported, 10 became insulin independent after 1 year. So that's about 85% success rate. 92% reduction in insulin use across all 12. Most had an A1C under 7%. Those are all good things, right? I mean, 85% success rate, that's good. A lot less insulin, regulated A1Cs, cool. But we need to be told this, and we need to make sure that we're acknowledging what we're learning. So imperfect results, 85%. What made the 2 of those 12? What made the 2 patients that didn't become insulin independent not become insulin independent, right? What are those compounding variables? We need to talk about lifelong immunosuppression and its associated risks, because guess what? Lifelong immunosuppression comes with, you guessed it, the big C word, right? Because immunosuppression means that we're decreasing sensitivity to things like HLA, which is how the immune system acts on things that need to be taken care of. So you have an increased risk of infections. You have an increased cancer risk. Some regimens are directly genotoxic in terms of like altering DNA and causing cancer expression, while others foster tumor permissive environments like the decreased HLA expression. So there's a whole can of worms that nobody is talking about. And then metabolic dysregulation, right? These increased cardiovascular risks and compound pre-existing metabolic issues, especially for those with type 1 diabetes, right? Nobody just has diabetes. You have, liver troubles, kidney troubles, nervous system troubles, you name it. If you don't have an immune system working at full throttle, just for the sake of beta cells, what else are you being compromised in? And what does that mean for your reliance on the healthcare system, which was one aspect of our updated goal? So this lack of systemic context to maintain the health of implanted beta cells is the root, right? How can we eat normally? What does normally mean? How do we supply the nutrients that these beta cells need to survive and thrive and sustain? So here's just a quick little summary page here. I'll get my face out of the way. What we're being sold, right? Hey, This one's on the pamphlet, Vertex and Sana. You're off insulin, you get your health freedom back, and you're normal, just like everyone else. Hooray. What's not being said? In the case of Vertex, lifelong immunosuppressant use and the risks, right? Which they don't talk about. It's unclear what the side effects of long-term immunosuppression are. Sana, the metabolic impacts of insulin production from an immunoevasive cell. Is this really a one-time procedure? Or again, are we putting on auto subscription again, where we're going to need to keep going back every time those beta cells need to turn over? And unclear about long-term impacts of tumor-related therapeutic mechanisms, specifically decreased HLA expression and increased CD47 expression. Both of them depend on the autoimmune origin theory of type 1 diabetes to be correct, because none of them are addressing cell-based environment, dietary, or lifestyle factors. What is making these beta cells run? Are they managing iron? Do they have enough magnesium, potassium, calcium to operate properly? Is anything being done to address those things? The answer is no. And so it brings us back to the question, is this just like a really shiny new way to symptom management? Or are we actually addressing a problem? Because again, blood sugar is good, regulated. I get to eat what I want. Do we have any way of preventing the issue from happening again? Nope. You might even have to come back for a new thing that you get after being on immunosuppressants for so long. So, like, what's going on here? What's going on here, guys? The problem, right? What all those with type 1 diabetes think is the problem is gone. So we have this illusion of freedom, this illusion of normalcy. And yeehaw, the healthcare system shows up on its white horse. Faith in the system is restored. We can trust our doctors again because they got us a cure. Hooray for them. Sign me up for my follow-up in 6 months. Let's refill the prescriptions again, shall we? And on a greater societal impact front, what happens to all the advancements that we made independent of the healthcare system, right? If your beta cells are working and you don't have to worry about your blood sugar anymore, are you really going to be committed to finding out as much about your health as you were before? No way. Curiosity and the public research efforts are halted because you don't need to look anymore. Meanwhile, none of what caused the issue in the first place is being addressed. And of those things that caused it in the first place, none of those things has to change because we can't see the problem anymore. So agriculture and food, how we're taking care of our food and supplying our food, insurance, pharmaceuticals, they all stay the exact same, which they love. And we have no means of bringing about change because we've been pacified. So this, I argue, is actually kind of harmful in the long run because we're looking for a quick fix at the expense of actually learning what's going on. Cellular environment optimization. This could be iron management. This could be electrolyte balance. This could be systemic organization within the body itself, organizing body systems, liver, gut, nervous system, all of it. Nutrient-based repair. Food is thy medicine. Food is thy medicine. And if we just get our beta cells taken care of, we lose sight of that. And so if we don't address any of those things, these stem cell therapies are just graphs floating in chaos. They're insulated and functional because the immune system can't touch them, and they make insulin, but they're not integrated to a healthy system, and they can't sustain themselves, breeding more dependence. And then, like I mentioned before, it's loss of momentum. With a cure in place, we lose the momentum to continue assessing alternative methods and assessing what's actually going on. For all of us, if we not only do we lose like the internal drive to look, right? Why keep looking if we already have the answer? We lose the ability to look, because if our blood sugar is regulated artificially, how do we practice alternative methods? How do we measure their progress if our beta cells are being like propped up elsewhere? We can't learn anything new. So we're in the midst of teaching ourselves how to fish, and a misaligned cure is giving us the catch. It's giving us the fish to distract us from mastering the process. I know we all know the metaphor of, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for life. We're teaching ourselves to fish. Don't take the fish. We need to learn how to fish. And then losing sight of the trees in an oversimplified forest. And this goes back to kind of like the confusing marketing behind vitamins and minerals and alternative ways of healing. Pieces of the puzzle are being dismissed or undervalued because of their perceived lack of consistency, right? Oh, well, I took magnesium and I didn't get better. Well, you need to understand it in the context of everything else. And just because it works for one doesn't mean it's the same exact thing for someone else. Because we've assumed that the cure is singular, consistent, and uniform across an entire disease state, and it is not. It's going to be a little bit different for everyone else, and here's how I want to show that. We need to learn the system. Now, this is not exhaustive. This is strictly for demonstration purposes. The red is gut, green is liver, blue is pancreas, purple is nervous system. There are more components at play, but this is just to illustrate that across 3 people that may have diabetes, the factors that went into their diabetes developing are going to be at different levels. Diabetes is a symptom. That's it. So not every person has the same set of tasks when it comes to addressing their unique systemic imbalances. And within each of these, the gut, the liver, the pancreas, the nervous system, there are so many options on how to address the areas of focus, right? So it's like person 1's gut is doing pretty good. Person 3's gut, not so good at all. Person 2 needs some help. So let's say person 2 is like, oh, well, I drink, this is oversimplified, but, person 2 is like, I drink ginger tea before my meals. And that helps me because their gut's okay. Person 3 starts drinking ginger tea before their meals, and it gets a little bit better, but not enough, right? Because they have further to go. They need another thing. And so, and beyond just like the measurables, the quantifiables within each of these systems, there are non-measurable variables in healing. Your sense of safety, your nervous system regulation, your belief in your ability to. Person 1 could do everything they needed to address their imbalances, but if they don't believe that it's actually working and they're kind of living in this state of like, I hate that I have diabetes, I'm doing all this, I don't know if it's going to work, it's probably not going to work, even though it's the exact right thing. And then I just pose this to think how humans react when the perceived answer is shown, right? Because What if someone did come forth and say, hey, listen, I found the thing for diabetes? What happens on a societal level? People would go apeshit. People would lose their goddamn minds, right? Just imagine. So person comes forward, cured my diabetes, no more insulin, I can eat whatever I want, life is good. The rest of the world, what happened? Person one tells them exactly what they did. I took 20 grams of vitamin C every day for 5 years, no spinach, no applesauce, and I ran 2 miles every other day. Again, not based on anything real, but you can just imagine the hype around this one person's exact prescription. So what happens? The rest of the world hears this without any context, and they say, I got to do everything this person did because it worked for them. It's got to work for me. Vitamin C, you can't keep it on the shelves. You got all these companies coming into the market selling all of these different versions of vitamin C no one's ever heard before. Nobody really knows what's going on. There's some stories of how it worked, other stories of how it went horribly wrong. Nobody wants to buy applesauce anymore. Spinach is the devil. And everyone wants to make vitamin C. Meanwhile, the running market, sidewalks are filled to the brim with people running because they thought running heals diabetes. And then from a health professional standpoint, everyone and their mother is talking about how, well, it's cardiovascular health. It's the oxalates in spinach. It's the fructose in orange juice and vitamin C, the bioflat. It's like they're grasping at straws, hoping to give some relevant information that's going to let them profit off of the hype on this one person's cure. But what actually happens to diabetes? Let's be honest. Some see benefits. Some see a lot, some see a little, some don't see any at all. Why? Because person one had a unique set of circumstances behind the development of their unique diabetes. And it just so happened that vitamin C, apple, spinach, and running were pivotal things in that. But again, you're never getting the whole story. There's just infinite variables leading to this person's success with these specific routines. Meanwhile, you're a completely different person. Look at what their needs would be based on their 4 categories. You arrived at diabetes on a completely different road. So if you take someone else's quote unquote cure and apply it to yourself with no knowledge of how those pieces fit into your disease development, the imbalances and deficits persist and you don't get relief. And so it follows this bell curve. When you kind of just apply these across the board cures without addressing the underlying issue. And this is where we exist in the health and wellness space right now, because we just lack a context of a complete picture of what health actually looks like. And it feeds this cycle of, man, I hope there's a cure. Oh my God, someone felt relief. I'm going to try this out. Oh, it didn't work the way I wanted to. Shoot. Time goes on. Oh, another hope, and it's exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. And then let's talk about what's happening emotionally and mentally when it comes to a cure coming about the way that it did, and how we come to terms with what our expectations of what we should get in a cure. So let's be honest. What we are learning about from a public perspective and how we've connected and collaborated is beginning to overreach the professional realm. Type 1 diabetes patients have never been more educated, connected, and enthusiastic for a cure, because we've been able to self-experiment and share results. We've got the courage and the resources to put bigger puzzle pieces together than ever before. And I'll mention those projects again: Crushing T1, the Beta Cell Project, and T1 Remission subreddit. Harmine, GLP-1, those studies talking about increasing beta cell regeneration, success with Qigong, chiropractic adjustments, non-traditional energetic practices, all of these things outside of the scope of where we thought the cure had to come from. And so now you have these companies with these advanced technology capitalizing on our exhaustion, because with the huge new influx of people with type 1 diabetes and the lack of circulating information on how to actually go about managing what's really the issue, who wouldn't be the first to volunteer for one of these inpatient procedures? And it doesn't matter if you've had the disease 40 years or 4 days. We've all been on the cure's right around the corner, wink, wink, for 40 years. No one believes that shit anymore. No one believes it. And we used to think that it was because we really didn't think they had it. It was like, oh yeah, they just keep saying that, but they don't actually have it. But now, given the timeline of how this is all played out, maybe they've had it the whole time and they just didn't have a reason to let it out. We'll talk about that in a little bit, and from an education standpoint, what parent is educated enough, what person with type 1 diabetes is educated enough on the condition to fully comprehend the side effects or possible health implications of what else needs to happen with these implant technologies? And then I feel this daily, the societal pressure not to spoil it for the rest of us, right? Who wants to be the guy when the cure comes around to be like, hey guys, this isn't it. I don't want this because this, and this. Because who's ready to listen to that when they're just ready to not have the disease anymore and it's being sold as not having the disease anymore? And they know that. They know that. When the consumer outgrows or outcompetes the market, businesses need to keep themselves on the receiving end of public advancements. Right? We are gaining more understanding on how this disease is developing. The business side of diabetes needs to make sure that it doesn't cost them. So guess what? They deliver on a cure that's been on standby for we don't know how long. Stem cell therapy, immunomodulation. Does anybody else think that's weird? That as soon as we start to actually get somewhere in understanding how this is going about, the cure, it's here. It's here. The trial, it's all here. I don't know. And it's giving you the desired result, right? You get beta cells that make insulin. So you're happy. But it's really just symptom relief that most don't realize is a symptom, while bypassing the root cause and keeping consumers in the dark. This allows for continued dependence on the healthcare system, on the food system, on the insurance and the pharmaceutical system. And it prevents the community from overreaching the medical profession and realizing their sovereign power in healing. Because like I said before, if you're cured, A, why would you look? And B, even if you did, you'd have no way of knowing what was actually working. And here's just a quick little timeline graphic of why I think it's shady, how things have all shaped out. But down here in the left-hand corner, the public is completely disconnected from healing abilities. It relies on the industry. This was not all that long ago. I know when I got diagnosed, it was like, holy moly, I got diabetes. Tell me what to do, doc. I don't have a say in this. There's no way. And I had no control over it. Eat the way you did before. You don't need to exercise. Just, pump insulin. You're good. The system in blue, the public in yellow. The system profits in this holding pattern, right? It's just, how do we manage the condition, manage the condition, manage the condition? Meanwhile, bolstering industry influenced illness, because we're not addressing any of the loops at play here. But then the public spidey senses start to tingle a little bit, and we're starting to see that the research is stagnating. We get tired of being told, 5 years away, almost there. Oh, almost there. And we start to do our own looking. And we start to find things that no one was talking about before. What? And we go to business and we're like, hey, you've been talking about this for a long time. How do you not know this? And they say, dissension in the ranks. They sense a loss of compliance. Nobody wants to go to the doctor anymore. Nobody wants to listen anymore. They're experiencing advancements in their health independent of having to go to the doctor. Whoa. Let's increase our research efforts to match those of public interest. We'll fiend small incremental advancements. Hey, we got this new CGM, closed loop system, just as good as having a pancreas, right? Eat what you want. The pump takes care of it. Don't worry about it. We make advanced connections. We recognize the industry's faults. This isn't going to play anymore, right? I feel better now avoiding what the industry has told me to do than ever before. It's like, it's at the point now where if your doctor's telling you to do something, do the opposite. I don't want to do it. I'm not doing it. It made me sicker, and it made me have to come back. I'm not doing that anymore. Oh my God, the business. We found it. Everything that you were talking about before, at least I think so. I wasn't really listening, but everything that you wanted, here it is. Beta cells with insulin, baby. We'll address the immediate public concern. By the way, hey, you got your beta cells, you got your insulin. You're gonna need to come back in and either get a re-injection of the cells, and you're gonna need the immunosuppressants. So we'll reaffirm the patient-industry relationship. You're better, but you're not off the hook, right? Crazy. And so you create this sense of safety among the uneducated cure consumers. But again, you're still a consumer. You're just consuming a new cure. So you get symptom relief and unwittingly continue to advocate for a lifestyle that was making you sick in the first place, because you have no impetus for change. You have no reason. Because nobody ever came out and said explicitly, hey, the way we're living our lives right now is why we're diseased. But hey, if you've got an answer, why would you change? And by not addressing the underlying systemic imbalances of why diabetes came about in the first place, we just keep kicking the can down the road. Because, hey, you don't have the raw materials to keep your beta cells alive. We'll give you propped up beta cells. But guess what? Something else fails down the line, because the root cause is that you don't have what you need to sustain a healthy cellular environment. So when something else comes about, it could be through the immunosuppressant use or whatever, but something else is going to come up down the road, and we say, oh my God, not this new epidemic. All of this is happening. We have no idea where this came from. News cycle started all over again. So now we come to our relationship with how all of this is being presented. How do we break this cycle of healthcare dependency? How do we become an educated consumer that is empowered to advocate for ourselves by wielding our knowledge and power effectively? Remember what we've learned and why we're here. We can see what's going on under the surface. And we are learning and we are piecing together how that comes about. stick with that. Yes, I know it's possible to go have that procedure done, have that beta cell, have that insulin, and you, in the immediate time frame after that, have nothing to worry about. But we need to break this industry-patient relationship that's going on right now. And we need to commit to the process of discovering our unique circumstances, our role in keeping our health, and not falling for the one-size-fits-all band-aid. We're over that. We're over that. And the best way to do that is to continue to collaborate in a community setting, whether it be global or local. I've said it from the beginning, the first few episodes of this podcast. Like, it's those with diabetes who cure diabetes. And I believe that with all my heart. Now, this may seem a little counter to my spirited narrative on what's actually going on in the healthcare industry right now, but we need to avoid like good guys and bad guys. We need to avoid vilifying those who aren't working for us. And it's solely to do with where we are in a headspace, right? What if we can know and understand the inner workings of our bodily system and learn from the diabetes technology in a sustainable way? Our priority is our own health, right? And it doesn't, evil is not a constructive force. Seeing evil, acknowledging evil, giving your attention and awareness to evil is a destructive thing, even if you're not the one actively being evil. So tearing down others and villainizing people does not achieve what we're looking for. We can acknowledge the trends in history without it being our primary driver and focus. Be pro-good. Be for the good more than we are anti-bad, right? We can express our frustration, express our anger, but it cannot be why we do what we do. And we can't spend all of our time and attention on ripping others down because it's detracting from our focus on building ourselves up. And that's our priority. And even if we did want to throw a bone out and reconciliate and actually have the community be all inclusive and not just us and not them, what if these implanted beta cells were paired with the nutritional support, the detox clearance, the emotional support, stress management, and improved community resources that did address the root causes that the beta cell failure was caused by, right? What if both work? Because I think if you do, I mean, it's going to be, I think anything's possible, right? What if we can resolve the issue and prevent it from happening again, all while learning how those things fit into our unique systems? And how can we have a community-based discourse on what we're experiencing and how, so that my success can feed into your success, can feed into their success? Because that's beyond symptom management, and that's actually addressing the issue. And this extends far beyond just diabetes, right? Multiple modalities. I'm talking about food and agriculture, clean food, local growers, decentralized authority. We need people to start taking care of people. improve education and our understanding of how our systems work, and give them the resources to actually put it into action, whether it be through food, herbs, physical activity, spiritual, emotional outlets, local-led initiatives that allow communities to take care of themselves. That is the goal. And I'm smiling just thinking about it. And as we navigate the existing system as it is, what is our role in this consumer market? We are the market. If we don't like something, how you get rid of it is that you don't give it your money. You don't give it your attention. And if you can't find what you're looking for, ask for it. Speak it into existence. Someone was thinking the same thing. You might realize that you have the power to actually start creating what it was you're looking for in the first place. That's how Diabetes for Diabetes Radio started. Nobody was talking about the alternative side of diabetes, so I started talking about it. And now we've got tons of different people talking about it. And there may have even been people before me who are now seeing more traction because it's like okay to talk about now. Because it comes down to us taking care of one another. Share your health experience. Cook your own food. Share it with your friends so that everyone is being nourished from a social standpoint, from a physical standpoint, from a mental and emotional standpoint. We all have a role to play in what this cure looks like for everyone. So, I hope now we've got a little bit better idea of what is in a cure. Is this simply a wish granted? God, please give me the beta cells with insulin. Or is it more? Is it more than just that? I think it is. And we have to acknowledge how far we've come and give ourselves the credit we deserve in using our experiences, being courageous to try new things, to experiment, to share, and to grow. Because that's ultimately the power that we have to discern quick fixes from root causes. Taking other people's wins and using them for my benefit in the context of my body and my needs. And likewise, sharing what I've learned so that others can take what I've learned and apply it to their unique situation as well. We need to get all the puzzle pieces out on the table. And with the recent technological advances, we have to be honest about what these things are. We need to ask questions. And if we don't get the answer to the questions that we ask, we don't move forward. Is what we're being given enough? And if it's not enough. And you have to have the courage to say no. Because our goal is independence. And there is a much bigger narrative at play than just, I don't want diabetes anymore. And so we need to retain that power and ask of better from the industry side of things, but also from one another in a community standpoint and from like sovereignty standpoint for our own authority and our health. And with that, I can't thank you enough for listening in on this episode. This one meant a lot to me, and I'm so grateful to have the community I do. We need to keep this conversation going now more than ever because we are at such a pivotal time in diabetes advancement. The ball is in our court more than anyone realizes or wants us to realize. And so we need to keep the questions coming. We need to stay true to our mission, recognize what it is we're asking for, and not stop until we get it. So if you had questions, thoughts, comments on anything that I've covered here that you want to hear more about, please leave a comment, share with a friend. Let's keep this conversation alive on a macro scale. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Share it with a friend. I'm on TikTok as well at Bowie_Madison. All of the links will be in the description for the supplements I use, for the products and services I use to help me in my healing journey. Again, this is episode 50 of Diabetics for Diabetics Radio. I cannot thank you enough for being here. My name is Bowie Madison. I love you, and I'll see you in episode 51.